One of the major arguments that I see in many of your videos is that it is possible to separate criticism of the religion of Islam from the actual Muslim people. And yet, this line seems to be crossed very often. I see things like raghead or camel fucker or other things like that in your comment sections. I see people taking very serious shots at Muslims in videos and hangouts, and they don't get called out. At least not that I can see. So my question is this: why should a person of conscience who is concerned about the Muslim people and their community not being harmed or mistreated, why should they believe that you're actually only attempting to look at the ideas and talk about the ideas if you ignore bigotry that's occurring right in front of you? And in that light, would you be willing to break bread and salt with moderate Muslim people on your videos, have hangouts, invite them to your channels, just in order to build some bridges there and to learn more about what they think and how they feel and what their experience has been, so that information and knowledge can be furthered?
I cannot talk for others, and I do not have the right to tell people what they are or are not allowed to say. But personally, I tend not to use derogatory terms when I talk about Muslims. And I do see a huge difference between Muslim and the religion of Islam. According to the Quran, most Muslims are kafir. Most Muslims have the right to be killed by other Muslims. There are plenty of Muslims recognizing this themselves. Therefore, you have a lot of people who are only Muslim in name, but not in fact, because they cannot say they're not Muslim, because as soon as they say they're not Muslim, they are more likely to get killed. Even though by being the wrong sort of Muslim, they're already likely to get killed. For example, look at the Sufi and the Shia Sunni fight in Mali. Look at what ISIS is doing. Look at what happened in Iran. These are all examples of how the faith is toxic towards everyone, even other Muslims. I've probably talked to more Muslims than you have, and I actually read the Quran. You should try that too. Now, my problem is not with Muslims, even though a large majority of Muslims are against me and against just about everything the West stands for. My problem still is not with the individual, but with the religion. If you do not see the difference, then I'm more than willing to do a long talk with you to exchange ideas. You probably won't do one with me though.
Do you deny that systemic racism against black people is like a thing in general? If so, what? Okay, just step up, just cover your ears for a second and let the smart people talk. If not, why is it so much more important to you to demonize groups like Black Lives Matter than to actually use your platforms to discuss actual solutions to issues surrounding race and racism?
Yes, I do believe there is racism. No, there is no systemic racism. If there is systemic racism, please tell me which government is pushing for it, by what organization or what institute. And nice dig there. Oh, I feel so burned because I'm not smart, but you are. So, is there racism? Yes, there is. It goes two ways, by the way. I do believe there's racism towards blacks. I do believe there's racism towards whites. Now, what can we do to stop racism? You know what? I'm not even going to answer that myself. I let someone else answer that. Give me a second.
How are we going to get rid of racism until...
Stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man.
Seems most white people are doing what he suggested. So, are we waiting for the black people to follow suit? And this is something he said quite a long time ago. The true catch, of course, is that if we do as he asks, then people can no longer claim that they are victims. And that's the problem we are having with Black Lives Matter and feminism, in all fairness, and social justice warriors, because they all consider themselves victims. Victims of what? Something that happened a few hundred years ago. If we go further back in time, white people were the victim. Do we mention that? Should we mention that? You know what? I don't live in the past. I try to live in today, and I'm working towards the future. Why are so many regressive left people regressing, which means going back? Did you consider that?
If you've ever discussed or done a video about black on black crime, when are you going to do a video about white on white crime and what we as white people can do to solve the problems in our community?
Now, I've never done a video on black crimes. I have done videos on the ignorance and stupidity of Black Lives Matter, and in that I also mention black on black crime. So what am I going to do about white on white crime? Well, the same I'm doing about black on black crime. I'm leaving it to the law enforcers, because those are the ones that have to deal with this. That's what they get paid for, and that's why they take the risks. Hell, I'm not even allowed to do anything about it. But yeah, crime committed by white folks is a problem too. The thing is though, that no one wants us to say, yeah, white lives matter, or all lives matter, because black lives matter. Black lives is the biggest thing out there. Whites, they don't count. Even though blacks are more likely to be killed by other blacks, I mean, at a rate that makes homicide the primary killer for young black men in America. Now, if this is the same issue that we have amongst white communities, trust me, then I will make that point known as well. But it's about the hypocrisy of Black Lives Matter. I mean, yes, crime is a problem. I don't even want to call it black on black crime or white on white crime. I want to call it crime. But we have an organization out there that makes it sound as if the police enforcement is the problem of these black communities. And they want to reduce police in these black communities. Look at where they are now. Imagine where they will be if there will be less police in their areas.
Why is a literal teenager's different definition of racism from you so horrifying that you all have to go, no! No, we have to stop him! We've got to debunk him now! Ah!
So I'm only to criticize people that you agree I can criticize? And it's not me saying that these persons are bad or weak or feeble. That's you saying that, because I'm not allowed to criticize them because I might hurt their feelings. But did anyone tell them not to have certain ideas because it might hurt the feelings of the people she's talking to?
Yep.
Yeah, no, that didn't come out right. I'm sorry. But yeah, it's not that we're not allowed to criticize certain people because you might consider them weak. It doesn't make sense.
Wherever did you get the idea that racism was a self-applied identity? And if the only true racists are the racists who self-identify as racists, how can we ever expect to make any social progress to reduce racism? Or did I just answer my own question?
No, but you probably just blocked everyone with a different opinion than yours. The thing is not that racism is something you can self-identify with. The problem we are having with racism is not so much that it doesn't exist, but that certain groups are being excluded from being racist because of the power dynamic bullshit. I'm sorry, but if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. Isn't it like that?
Okay, so what's the solution?
Well, for one, I think the solution is not to pretend that some people can be racist and some people can't be racist. I mean, if you see racism, then acknowledge that you see racism, but don't pretend that, well, if a white man does it, it's racism, and if a black man does it, it's, what, reversed racism? There's no such thing. There's only racism. Either it is racism or it is not. That's another thing. I mean, no one ever talks about reversed racism. It's you guys that keep talking about how reverse racism doesn't exist. We agree. There is no such thing as reverse racism. There is racism, though. So why are we accepting racism?
You often say that you are for equality of opportunity, but if people of color, for instance, have to overcome barriers whites do not, such as discrimination and unequal treatment, as are well documented in various studies, then how can the current situation be thought of as equal opportunity in any real way? And why do you consider it racist to discuss these issues?
You know, I don't mind discussing this issue. And I won't even call it racism if we do discuss this issue. But when we do discuss this, you will call me a racist. Because the first thing I will mention is that it is not a race thing. Because there are lots of white people who don't do well in schooling either. Who don't make a lot of money either. Well, it's not all of them. No, well, there are more poor white people than there are poor black people. But on average, white people have more money than black people. Yeah, because on average, there are more white rich people. But then again, considering that one group is 13% of society and the other group is around 70% of society, of course, the larger group will have more rich people in them. But the larger group will also have more poor people in them. We always talk about the poor black people. Oh, they don't have money, they don't have education. But we have groups within white society that has that too. We have groups in Latino society that has that too. Isn't the issue the fact that we have poor people? Why do you have to make it racialized?
Well, not exactly.
No, it's not that I'm saying they're not black. I mean, yes, there are poor black people. What I'm saying is there are poor people, white and black.
Do you understand basic English syntax? Like, you know, if I say this cat is pretty, I don't mean that all other cats aren't pretty. Like, do you really not get why saying all lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter is not only racially insensitive, but just patently ridiculous?
I am sorry. I must have missed that incredible thick plate in front of your head. Are you really this dense? The whole reason why people say all lives matter is because it is not a racial issue. And all you are doing is forcing us to agree that it is a racial matter, which, as I said before, it is not. People getting killed by law enforcement is a problem. Telling us that black people get disproportionately killed by law enforcement is bullshit. It's statistically not true. Reality has nothing to do with it, does it? I mean, it's the narrative. And because it's the narrative, we're not allowed to say all lives matter. Because then we take away from the narrative. That's the whole issue. You want to keep it racialized because that's the only narrative you have. There is an issue, but it's not an issue for all people, it's just an issue for black people. Fuck you, seriously. Don't you understand that you yourself are creating a really racist narrative?
So maybe we should just get fucking rid of him.
Yes, by all means, let's get rid of this racist Black Lives Matter crap.
Isn't it offensive to men to assume that a man could only ever want equality for women, and therefore be comfortable with feminism as a whole in order to get laid, and that reduces us to beasts? If that was the case, wouldn't I attempt to get laid from my views instead of not ever trying that?
Yeah, it may be unfair to say that you're just doing it to get pussy. This still could be true, but it could also not be true. You might just be delusional. You might just think that women don't have the same rights men do. You might just think that men actually have more rights than women do. Reality, however, proves that this is not the case. Reality shows us that where female genital mutilation is illegal, it's okay to happen to men. And men can be conscripted, but women cannot. Just two small examples. I could give you more, by the way, but I'm doubtful that you will listen to them anyway.
If you say you're an egalitarian, will you call out the man-hating slurs that you see coming from people within your community? People who use terms like cuck, beta male, faggot, or mangina? All of these things basically distill men down into thinking that the most important thing about them is to be having sex with a woman. That's rather offensive. So what are you doing to stop this kind of behavior in your community?
Okay, two questions again. So let's start with the first one. Am I going to stop people using words that might be considered insulting, like mangina? Okay, shortly, no. I'm sorry, I'm not. You have the right to be insulting. People may judge you for it, but I'm not going to take away someone's right to free speech, whether I agree with it or not. Now, if it offends the situation I am in, or if they keep doing it, then I might say something about it. But that's more of a personal thing than a societal thing. I don't care. For example, I don't care if people use blasphemy and if they want to say God damn in front of every second word out of their mouth. But eventually it will wear me down, so I'll ask them to stop. Not because I care about the word God damn, but because of the intonation and the overall atmosphere it creates. Doesn't make sense to you, does it? Well, this is only part of the complete story that I'm making. The rest will be put here as well. Please like, share, subscribe if you feel so inclined, and look out for the next installment of it.